Hello. Hi guys, welcome to Iron Gryphon Studio. Today I'm going to make something kind of simple, something small and just a little mini build. And it should be relatively quick and really quite simple to make. Unless you have kind of fat sausage fingers like mine, in which case it might be a little bit fiddly. But I'm going to make some candlesticks. They're going to be 28mm scale, good for Dungeons and Dragons, Warhammer Fantasy, Mordheim, Age of Sigmar, frostgrave, things like that. It should be cool for dressing up pretty much any scene, embellishing rooms, making them look a bit more visually interesting for players, maybe providing light for characters in the game, and hopefully should be pretty effective to look at. So yeah, I think I'm going to do them in like different materials. Well, I'm going to paint them to look like different materials, so I'm going to use like gold and probably some silver and definitely some bronze because I like bronze, and maybe some wrought iron effect, that kind of thing. So yeah, we'll just we'll get to it, we'll crack on, let's see what we can do. Alright, so first things first, you're going to need a few things. So I've got super glue. Better off using super glue rather than something like poly cement or hot glue gun or anything else, because this is thinner and it dries nice and clear and you won't see any residue. Second of all, we've got a file which is cylindrical in shape, and it's just so that you can accurately get into the center of the beads with it and hopefully bore them out a little bit if needed. Also, craft knife, very handy. A scale model for checking the height of the candlesticks, and I've got several different kinds of rods. I've got 2 styrene rods there and a piece of florist wire and then a cocktail stick. Now you can use a cocktail stick for this method, but honestly I don't want the wooden texture to show through, so I'm going to use styrene rods instead. Right, now these styrene rods are slightly different. One is a bit wider than the other and there's a hole through it. The other one is a bit thinner with no hole, and the florist wire here is, I mean, you could probably use paper clip instead of florist wire, it would probably be just as good. And then we've got the beads, the craft beads, I guess. Pretty good, pretty cheap on eBay. You normally buy like a little pack of them, but they're pretty useful for a lot of different things. Very useful for candlesticks. Right, first things first, we're going to need a couple of lengths of this plastic tubing. I'm using the thicker plastic tubing at the moment. As you can see, I used a candlestick for reference there. That's the one I've already made, and this one's going to be the exact same as that one. The whole point of this is to do these in maybe 2s or 4s. That way you can ensure that you can put them maybe either side of a door or in the corners of a room, and it kind of looks symmetrical, looks a little bit better. So when you do decide to select particular beads for different thicknesses of rods or tubing or whatever, just make sure you've got doubles or quadruples, you know, multiples of the same bead, just so you can get them nice and symmetrical. Now here I'm having a little bit of trouble putting the rod inside the bead. Now I should have probably offered this up properly before applying the glue, so take some advice from me and make sure the beads fit on first. So then I take the file I had, and I'm just trying to widen that tiny little hole in the middle of the bead to try and maybe fit the rod in, and it's being a little bit stubborn, so get the knife in there as well. Try again and it works. Try the other end, that kind of works too, but I'm just going to tidy up the glue so it's dried on the tube, and I'll just make sure it fits. Now let's try again. So really you can put these beads in a lot of different orders really. What you do want though is to have quite a wide base so that it stands up quite nicely, and also it looks more realistic, because most candlesticks would have quite a heavy base on them so that they don't topple over, being too top heavy. You also want towards the top something that the candle would sit onto, kind of like a plate that would gather the melted wax and things. So try and keep a wide base, and then the top should be a plate to collect the wax. Now you can see here from the one I've already made, I've got a wide base with a little bead just above it, one in the middle, and then two at the top. And the actual tube itself is going to create the candle as well on the top. The candle which will have a wick placed in it with a bit of florist wire very, very soon. Always keep in mind that you want to be symmetrical, so make two at a time. Make sure that the beads line up nice and evenly. Apologies for the focus here. I take quite a bit of gluing, quite a bit of changing around. It's a little bit finicky this. It's a little bit difficult if you've got sausage fingers like me. There you go. Two candlesticks with candles already on top. Now the second one that I'm making here is a slightly different design. We're going to go for the wide base again, and I'm using a thinner tube this time because I've got beads with much smaller holes as well, so I'm going to use them on this particular one. They wouldn't have fit the other tube, and it's just a way of creating a few different designs, and maybe some to be very ornate and extravagant, and others can just be kind of basic and ordinary. Now you'll notice here that the thicker tube I was using has a hole through it, and that is perfectly sized to fit a piece of florist wire through. You could also use paperclip, as I said, and so here I've cut out a few sections of this tube. These are going to be very tiny candles, and they're going to go on the candlestick that was the thinner tube, because I didn't have a candlestick on the top. I didn't have a candle on the top, rather. So I'm just placing them on some florist wire with a bit of glue, and then once they're dry they can be clipped off with a pair of clippers, and they can be turned into proper candles. Okay, so after clipping them off, I've run the wicks a little bit long, so I'm just going to shorten them a little bit with some clippers. And there we go, 4 candles. And then with these ones here, I'm just placing some pieces of florist wire all the way down the tube just to act as the wick. I mean, I could have run these much shorter, these wires, but you can see how it looks. It looks pretty cool. And then the 4 that I cut out for the much thinner candlesticks can just sit on top in that little plate, the little wax collection bit. And once they're done, there you go, we've got 3 sets of candlesticks. Now I'm going to add a few more in this next photo. There we go. And I've added 2 on the 2 sets of candlesticks on the left there. These have got a lot more beads in them. They're a bit more ornate, and I'm going to make them look kind of a bit more extravagant. So I'm going to use a bit of glorious gold on one of them. A couple of these sets of candlesticks will be bronze, I think. I also want to do one as a wrought iron colour, so I'm going to use a bit of Skaven Blight Danger, which is just a very dark grey, and then I'll probably put a bit of black wash on that, and then I'm going to do one in a Runefang steel, so it's nice and silvery. And we're just going to base coat these things in one colour. I'm going to use gold for these ones, so just get it all over everywhere. Okay, now with the candlesticks done, we're going to move on to the candles. I'm going to use some Screaming Skull by Citadel, and it's going to go on very thick. What I want is that really creamy kind of porcelain style colour that you get from candle wax. And there you go. I'm going to put Agrax Earthshade on the 2 gold and some Null Oil on the bronze, silver and the Skaven Blight, and I'm going to put Lilac Oxide on another bronze one just to give some patina. And now we're going to move on to the wicks with everything else painted already. I'm going to use Uriel Yellow for this, just because it's a very vibrant yellow and it makes a great flame colour. Now with that step done, I'm going to move on to putting some melted wax on the candles, and to do that I'm using some Screaming Skull, which was the base coat for the candles themselves, and I'm going to add to it some tacky glue. Now you'll need kind of a 50-50 sort of mix here. I think it took some time to get it right, but you want to put it on kind of thick. It will dry a little bit thinner and it might be a little bit too subtle unless you put it on quite thick, in quite big kind of blobs. Try and streak some down the candles if you can, and maybe let it pool at the bottom just to give the effect of melted wax. And there you can see a bit of melted wax, and I'm putting on a little bit of riser rust on top of the yellow there, just to make that flame look a bit better. Okay, so all done. Yeah, it took a little bit longer than I probably anticipated, but I mean the glue has to dry, the paint has to dry. That was probably the longest waiting time. But they were a little bit fiddly with these things because flat fingers, and but yeah, they look pretty cool. I'll probably end up using them in other terrain pieces. Like I'll probably just stick them to other terrain pieces rather than using them separately and randomly in amongst other dungeon tiles and stuff. I'll probably put them on future builds, so you'll probably see them reappear at some point in the future. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you for watching this episode. That's all for this week. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a like or a comment or a subscribe, and let me know if there's anything you want me to tackle in the future. Maybe if you have any requests or whatever, then let me know in the comments below and I will get back to you. So that's all for now. Thanks for watching and happy crafting.